Hey everybody, it's Chris from Steeda, and we're doing kind of a different video tonight. We just got back from the unveiling of the 2024 7th generation Mustang. It has been a long 36 hours here in Detroit, Michigan, and needless to say, I'm really excited to go through the press release with you, show you all of the new and exciting things that Ford has brought to the new 2024 Mustang. A huge thanks to Ford for inviting us out. Absolute blast here in Detroit, checking out the all-new 2024 Mustang, so stay tuned, we got a lot to go over. Kicking things off is the exterior of the new S650 Mustang. Definitely a lot of changes over the outgoing S550 Mustang, but a lot of them are very welcome. Starting with the front, this thing is coming up in your rearview mirror. It definitely looks different. It looks the part. It looks almost futuristic when you first see it. The pictures don't really do it justice. Seeing the car in person, it has a whole different kind of impression when you do see it in person. And with that said, depending on which trim level you get, a fun fact would be the EcoBoost versus the GT and versus the Dark Horse, which we'll talk about later, all have different bumper covers, different front fascias to define that particular trim level. In the past, we would see them swap out grills and things like that to differentiate these trim levels and engines that come on the Mustang, but to give it a whole new look from the front end, definitely a cool touch. Moving down the side of the car, one of the things that really stood out to me in the side profile of this new Mustang is specifically the window line. I think that's the correct term of it. But essentially, the line at the bottom of the windows on the side of the vehicle are actually moved a bit lower in comparison to the S550. This allows for better visibility and a little bit more of a muscular stance. Additionally, on the quarter window, it kind of angles up a little bit more towards the rear on the bottom to follow the body lines a little bit more. If there's one word to really sum up the 2024 Mustang in comparison to the outgoing S550 Mustang, I think angular would be the way to do it, or way to say it. The new S650 Mustang really just takes everything about the S550, turns the volume knob up, and really just brings it, I say, to the 21st century. We've been in the 21st century for a while. The rear of the car definitely leaves you curious. You obviously see the car coming in your rearview mirror, and as it passes you, obviously, it's a Mustang, it's always going to be out front. So when it passes you, those signature tri-bar taillights obviously are out there, loud and proud on the new 2024 Mustang. But one thing that kind of stood apart to me on this new Mustang in comparison to past Mustangs, honestly, for the past, I want to say, decade, they did away with the black taillight panel. I thought that was interesting. So it is a paint match deck lid all the way down. You see the GT emblem or whatever trim level emblem on the rear. But it is interesting to me to see, I mean, for the first time since I believe 2012, we're seeing a paint match deck lid. Could be an opportunity for the aftermarket, which would be pretty cool to further customize the vehicles. But aside from that, definitely love the new rear of the Mustang, the spoiler options, the different exhaust options and things like that really just set it apart. The interior is really what sets this car apart. Obviously, Ford did not stop at just the exterior. The interior is completely different. Now, personally, you guys probably know this already, I am a huge fan of technology, and this S650 Mustang is chock full of it. Looking at the interior, you are basically surrounded by screens. It's essentially a video game when you're switching driving modes and setting up your My Mode and working through the different menus and different settings of the center stack and the digital gauge cluster in the, right in front of you. But realistically, it is awesome to see in person. The tachometer is totally different. Coming from a 2018 Mustang with the digital dash, I thought that was cool. They took this to a completely different level. And for you Fox body Mustang fans out there, they definitely didn't forget about you. And honestly, a lot of this interior is based off the S197, the Fox body, and all those different styling cues of 60 years, nearly 60 years of Ford Mustang. So with that said, they actually have a mode in the digital gauge cluster that brings back the fonts, the colors, everything for the Fox body, which is awesome to see in a brand new Mustang, paying homage to the Fox body years ago. All right, two other quick things about the interior that stand out to me. First off, the emergency brake. Not 100% sure, but I don't believe this is cable driven anymore, which means it's electric. But it does still have the pull handle like the traditional Mustangs have always had. So I am curious to see how this looks and feels, obviously with the new electric, I guess, drift brake, which is very, very cool. They worked with Vaughn getting to develop that. But realistically, I mean, you're going to be able, whether you're a beginner or all the way to someone advanced who's been drifting for a long time, you're going to be able to use your Mustang right off the showroom floor and go drift in a parking lot and have some fun. Just make sure it's in a safe location when you do it. But aside from that, I'm going to geek out for a second. White Recaro seats. I don't know about you, but I would totally 100% get white Recaros in my car. So let me know your thoughts. Comment below. I think that's a really cool interior feature, something that sets it apart from the rest and definitely stands out. Next up, performance and drivetrain. Unfortunately, there is a lot we can't talk about here because the numbers just aren't out there yet. But realistically, they're talking about 480 plus on the GT, which is awesome to see. I think they were down to 450 on the 2022 Mustang and probably going into 23 as well. But good to see the power jump in the new GT. And then on top of that with the Dark Horse, we'll touch on that too, but closer to 500 horsepower, which is insane. We haven't heard anything on the EcoBoost, but they are saying it's a brand new GT engine and it's a brand new EcoBoost engine too. So we can expect to see probably higher numbers on the 2.3 liter EcoBoost. That's good for EcoBoost people, those better numbers. Obviously, the EcoBoost is a very well-balanced vehicle for those people that like to go autocross, a high performance package EcoBoost from a couple years ago in the S550. It's exciting to see that they're continuing to take this technology and push it into the new body style. Last but certainly not least on the drivetrain list is brakes. You have the option to jump to a 390 millimeter rotor up front with the 6-piston Brembos on the EcoBoost, which is really cool to see. But jumping to the GT, you get base GTs, get 352 millimeter rotors up front. Again, with the 4-piston Brembos in the back, 4-piston Brembos up front, and then the optional 390 millimeter rotor up front with the 6-piston Brembo calipers, again up front, 4-piston in the rear. Additionally, you can get these brakes in 3 different colors, black, red, and grabber blue. I'm a big fan of anything grabber blue related, so have at it. I love grabber blue. But one thing that I'm really, really stoked about when it comes to the braking system on the new 2024 Mustang is we've got 4-piston in the rear, standard. Very excited to see that because it's been on the 350, it's obviously on the GT500, but the Mach 1s, the Bullets, the GTs, the EcoBoosts, they've always had that single piston in the rear. And obviously out on the track, we found in our testing with the S550 that it is totally sufficient with that single piston in the rear and the right pad combination, fluid, all that sort of stuff out on track. But on the S650, we're excited to have that 4-piston out back because it not only has the additional braking potential if you are looking to push the limit, but it looks good too, right? And in terms of transmission options, we are getting 6-speed manuals, all about saving the manuals here at Steeda, so big fan of that. And obviously the A10, you can't argue that 10-speed automatic is insanely quick. We've seen it in action on the Silver Bullet, so it's good to see that they are keeping that going with the new S650 Mustang, but it's gonna be interesting to see that with these increased power numbers, what kind of drag times these cars are gonna put down. What do you guys think? Comment below. Unfortunately, we don't have all the power numbers here, but keep in mind, they will be coming soon. Ford's getting all that stuff ironed out for ultimately releasing it to the public. So stay tuned because we will be having those power numbers. You're gonna hear it here first, right here at Steeda. Next up, the Dark Horse. We were just as surprised as you guys were when it came to this car rolling out on stage. Everything we heard about leading up to the 2024 Mustang release, honestly, it's just, we were totally blown away, totally surprised, just like you guys were. So breaking down the details, we'll break it down for you because there's a lot to take in. Not only all of the racing programs that Ford Performance is getting back into, we're very excited to see that, but also the Dark Horse itself and the different variants of the Dark Horse and some of the options available with that vehicle. Kicking things off, we'll start with the big number, 500 horsepower. They're talking about a projected 500 horsepower for the Dark Horse Mustang. But before we get into those specific figures, let's talk a little bit more about what Dark Horse means. looking into the past and the different variants that have come from Mustang. Obviously, you have EcoBoost and GT, most recently in the S550 realm, but you also have the Bullet, you have the Mach 1, you have the 350, you have the 500. Dating back in S197, you have the Bullet, the GT 500, you have the Boss 302 in 2012 and 2013. These are all different variants that have basically been modified off of the regular GT platform and built into something bigger. The Dark Horse is just that and then some. Ford did not hold back at all. Definitely pulled out all the stops with this because they took all of the amazing things that they learned from the 350, the Mach 1, the Bullet program, and even some from the 500 program. And also, there are a couple of different changes internally that set this engine apart and allow it to make the power it does. After examining the photos and seeing the car in person, one thing that we believe is that the upper grille actually fuels both of those air boxes, meaning that there is a ram air effect going on both sides of that upper grille. Very cool to see. Ford taking advantage of, at speed, all of that air getting rammed into the front end of that S650 Mustang. So naturally, it's got to make 500 horsepower, right? And much like the outgoing Mach 1 on the S550 Mustang, the Dark Horse Mustang will have an available handling package, which will include carbon fiber wheels, 19 by 10.5 inch wheels up front and 19 by 11 inch wheels in the back, with very sticky Pirelli Trofeo R tires. Interesting to see Ford move away from the Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tires, so we're excited to see how the Trofeo R performs on the Mustang. And if you don't get the handling pack, do not worry, you still get some great tires. The Pirelli P0, both front and rear. You get a 19 by 9.5 in the front and a 19 by 10 in the rear. Additionally, the Dark Horse does get Magna standard, again, much like the outgoing Mach 1 and the S550. But what I'm most excited for is that Tremec being standard. I love the Tremec in the GT350. It feels awesome in the Mach 1, and to see that continue into the Dark Horse Mustang, very excited. Let's talk brakes. The Dark Horse does come with the same 390mm rotors up front, except they're two-piece, much like the GT350 rotors that you guys are probably familiar with, or even the GT500 rotors, which are two-piece. That means you're going to have better cooling on track, and obviously with a car like the Dark Horse, you get something like the handling package. That car is built for the track. And speaking of track, we have the Magna system that again is standard on the Dark Horse. You pair that with the stiffer springs, the stiffer sway bars, and frankly, the full package that is more dedicated towards the track. Very excited to see how this handles the track and then ultimately turning the volume knob up to 11. Additionally, the Dark Horse S and the Dark Horse R. If you want to take things to an even further level, especially when you're talking about track-focused Mustangs, then the Dark Horse S is a great way to start. With that, it comes a stripped-down Mustang that is gutted and ready for you to race. You get a cage, a harness, a fire suppression system, and frankly, anything that isn't race related or track related gets ripped out. And if that isn't enough for you, the Dark Horse R takes things to a whole other level. We're talking seam welding, a fuel cell in the rear, a full cage, and frankly, everything you need to get started on solely racing. And additionally, we're very excited to hear that Ford Performance is getting back into factory-backed racing. It's a big deal because they're going to bring the 2024 Mustang to 24 Hours of Daytona and Le Mans as well. So stay tuned, because anything and everything 2024 Mustang, you bet you can hear it right here at Steeda. Comment below. There is a lot to talk about, and to be honest, we just barely scratched the surface. There is so much information here on a brand new generation of Mustang. We're excited to see this. We're coming up on 60 years of an amazing, amazing vehicle. Hit that like and subscribe button, the notification bell, and don't forget the most important thing, speed matters.